Please take your seats. We're about to begin. Hello and welcome. Please put your hands together for your MC for the day, Tim Restiger.
Welcome back, everyone. Actually, I'm the one that just came back. I've been over the exhibit hall. I hope you do the same. Lots of exhibitors out there, including Trailhead, but that's it for my shameless plug. I'm actually here to introduce our panel, if you will, and Jay Larson from the Idaho Technology Council. Right here it says that he doesn't need an intro, but I should give him anyways. And I'm not going to read this intro because I have my own version of it. In a roundabout way, Jay is responsible for me being here today. I met Jay, I think it was 12 years ago when I was working at PKG. He was, at that point, one of the first, what I call, ecosystem warriors. He was going around the state and trying to build a technology ecosystem to help Idaho companies thrive. And so, blame it on him. That's the reason I'm at Trailhead. Welcome on stage, Jay, and you're going to introduce the panelists. So let's go.
So thank you guys very much for being here. This is an opportunity for us through IMTECH. The Idaho Technology, we have a Spark series, so we're doing this in conjunction with IMTECH, and tremendous opportunity to talk about artificial intelligence today. Things around artificial intelligence really quickly started in about the mid-1950s, where it came out of Dartmouth and all this other stuff. But it really came to the forefront about the 70s. And at that point, there was a person who was really got a Pulitzer Prize winner, and about 1970, he said in about 20 years, this one was out of University of Chicago, where areas, Dr. Simon is his name, and he basically said in 20 years, we are going to have the point where machines are going to be able to do all the things that humans can do. So now 20 years went by, didn't happen, right? But we have talk with three really leading artificial intelligence leaders at three companies. So I'm going to introduce them right now. James Bullock, please come. James came all the way from Louisiana. I'm sorry, I don't know why I came from Illinois. So let's hear it for James. James with Boise Cascade. Dan Siddall. Dan is with, came all the way across the quad. He's with Clearwater Analytics. And also Josh Johnston, he came all the way from Count, an Equifax company. So let's hear it for both of those, all three. Thank you. Take a seat, guys. So we start this out, you guys. One of the biggest things I'm going to tell you about artificial intelligence, I was in North Idaho 12 years ago. And when I was there, a person moved up there. I'm not going to tell you his name, but he moved up there from California. And his dad was the Apollo mission, and he helped design the lunar module that landed on the moon. This guy's brilliant. Aviation's all this stuff, and artificial intelligence is big. The Department of Defense came to him and he said, okay, we need you to be able to build a robot that will go out into the field of battle and be able to perform triage on injured warriors. And the guy said, okay, let's talk about that. So they got in a meeting and he goes, why are you asking me to be able to build a robot that can go out and do triage on warriors, humans that are wounded in battle? Why don't you just make a smart warrior that can go out and battle and don't sit there and bypass it? That was what he said 12 years ago to the Department of Defense. Put that as a side note, because that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about really where artificial intelligence is in 3 really awesome companies that provide a lot of assets and resources to the state of Idaho and the people who live here. So let's just go around right now. Jeff, we're going to start first with you. Talk a little bit about, all 3 will do this, about where artificial intelligence is and what it does for each one of your companies, Count, Clearwater, and then Boise Cascades.
Sure. Actually, Jay, I really like that that story. That resonates with me. My background is in robotics, so I spent about a decade research, explosive ordnance disposal robotics, and self-driving cars and things like that. The reason I got out of that field is I think that we were very locked into that thinking. We were thinking about robots, which are by definition embodied. And in robotics, you think of robotic solutions to problems. We think of things like, let's build a robot that'll do surveillance building when it's empty, so that we know if somebody comes in and breaks in. So robots that drive around and look for things. Why? We can put cameras at and look at the hallways and all of that, and it'll be cheaper than. So I think that view from the history of where AI has come, we spent so much time as a field in this space of robotics, which is like ridiculously fun, don't get me wrong. But the reason I got out of that field was actually we were developing and we were applying. There's a lot of opportunities to do that outside of what we think of as like going out into and doing it there. So I've been excited to see artificial intelligence come into business. I count about ago, and we protect digital interactions. So our background really comes from credit card fraud for e-commerce, and we've grown into more things since then. You have to go and collect a tremendous amount of data, look for the structure that's in that data and the outcomes that you get, and try to make better outcomes and protect all of us in here from identities stolen. Yeah. Again, there's no robotics in there, but the techniques that we use come from the exact same academic tradition, just now applied without that embodiment. We got bought by Equifax just a little more than a year ago, and this is, I think, the only a validation of this great ecosystem in Boise, and a lot of really nice exits for tech. Been great to see, but also I think it shows how companies like Equifax, which is a 20-something-year-old credit bureau, recognize that this technology is have to invest in it. It's part of moving forward. It's.
Yeah. And interesting as we talk about it really quickly with what you have. You went from having millions of points of information that you had to sit there and go through within milliseconds to it's like.
Well, we have billions already. We have more billions.
More billions.
So I mean, this does for you and Count and Equifax, pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, I would say, the views saying you're going to do everything a person does in 20 years. I think what makes those kind of silly is that I can't do everything a person can do, right? Everybody in this room is better than me at something. Okay. Nowadays the technology has moved into places where it's superhuman. So fraud analytics that our algorithms can't do, but our algorithms do just tremendous amounts more data than a person could ever view and ever see. So that's where I think a lot of the value proposition. We're not trying to replace humans. We're trying to lean into these places where you get that advantage, and certainly the scope of data that's available, with modern compute is just
exponentially. You can do so much because of that. Thanks so much, Josh. Dan, out in Clearwater.
Well, so first I started out at HP, part prediction failure stuff there, and then I moved over to Clearwater, and it's a completely different area where we're not using AI to predict, what this thing's going to fail with a bunch of data. We're taking financial data from thousands. We're trying to put all this data from different areas into this set of reports and calculations we do for a client. Just trying to get all of those different data sources into the same format is a daunting task. And there's places for AI in there, or you get complicated text documents that have interesting pieces scattered through the document, and this relates to something a paragraph down, or this in this sentence relates over here, and doing natural language processing to say, okay, here's the data and here's the things that relate to it. Oh, we have an interest rate and then you've got to find out, when does it pay? So somewhere in this document, there's a thing that says, well, it pays on the first of the month or first of the quarter. It's trying to find all those pieces in a text document and link those together. And then what if the transactions don't line up? Let's say, for example, that I bought a bond. It pays 5% interest. It pays first of the quarter. Well, here it is, the 5th of the month on the first of the quarter, and I don't have my money. What happened? We need to go for what happened, why didn't it get paid? Is this a typical thing? Is this delayed? So there's a lot of opportunity for AI in there to resolve any interactions, anything's missed. I mean, for example, if you bought 100 shares of somebody typed in 10, the decimal point switched. Somebody's got to reconcile that problem. And you can have humans do it. You're going to need a lot of them, depending on the volume of data that you're pulling in, number of accounts. Or you can start using computers to do the tasks that you would have tens or hundreds of people doing.
So efficiency is really coming into play.
It's the volume of data where you're really seeing the AI is there's not a single human that's going to look through 1 billion transactions in a day, right? It's this to be looked at to evaluate. Could be a lot of humans.
Yeah, it expands opportunities, right, that we have. So, well, we get again, Louisiana, and what's so good about James, it's a little bit different, is that he does this all in more of a manufacturing setting.
Yeah,
so
that's
James,
right.
Talk to us about this. And Todd, tell us about your, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So before I begin, I'll say that a lot of times my head will outrun my mouth. I'll stammer, so just be patient with me, right? So when we made the post online about it, my grandma, I don't think she really knew that I was going to be here. She knows I'm working in AI, but it's not my only job. And so she made this big post about AI and the devil and all kind of things. It was it's like, wait a minute, Grandma, that's me doing that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different perceptions about AI, but we'll talk about that in a bit. So for me, I didn't start like these guys did. I started in manufacturing. I grew up in manufacturing, so I started as a broom engineer. No, I'm just picking. I was on the floor, right?
That's a broom engineer. Yeah, I like that.
And so after a year or so of me telling everybody how to run the plant, they decided to let me try to run the plant. And so I worked through a number of jobs and was promoted over and over again. But through this process, my background is in math and computer science. But I went into manufacturing to make more money, quite honestly. So as I moved through the company, though, I saw this huge time to value proposition with machine learning in that there were so many things that I knew that we could do so much faster. And there were people out there watching these machines, they make a change, they wait, they see what happens, they make a change, they wait. Where with AI, you just program it to do it and it solves the problem and loops through. And there's a number of examples like that. And that's one part. The other part is just on the business side. In our plants today, there are teams that are split apart. So every process is separated, it's decoupled. And we do that strategically so that if we have a downtime event, we don't shut the whole plant down. But the side effect of that is nobody knows what the other teams are doing. Yeah. Right? And so from the start of the plant all the way through, everybody is looking at their opportunity. The beauty of AI and what our company is using it for today is now we can tie everything together. So at the front of the process, when they're evaluating their opportunity, they see how it's affecting the people downstream.
So you really, if you look at in your plants, because you were over several plants that
That's
are
correct.
located out Louisiana area and around Atlanta and Georgia and stuff like that, right?
That's right.
So if you look at that, what kind of efficiency are you gaining through some of the work that's through AIs?
Yeah, so typically on a reinforced learning solution on a machine, so we basically tell the program to win the game. We say, hey, stay in the safety of parameter, in the quality parameters, but the aim is run more. And typically we're seeing 5 to 10% improvement per machine center, and in a business like ours where every hour is thousands of dollars in a major way.
Wow. That's great. So thanks, Josh. So you came from autonomous driving vehicles where you kind of started your AI experience, right?
Yeah.
And then you see this deal that you were just talking about, how you're doing this now through count and fraud detection and all this other type of stuff, identifying the bad guys on the planet too, probably. What, if you bring this intersection, talk about how AI really, where you think it is today and where it might be into the future with what you're doing.
Sure. So the first thing we always have to do when we talk about this stuff is some definitions. Everybody has their own definitions, and I don't think most people slow down and stop to really think about what they mean when they use these terms. So artificial intelligence is a quality of a machine. It describes a characteristic where a machine exercises something that looks like human judgment. Interesting thing about that to me is it's constantly changing, the definition of artificial intelligence. So I took a class when I was doing my master's degree at Carnegie Mellon. There was a class on artificial intelligence, and I took that class in 2005, which is the last year that a human beat the top chess playing computer. Yeah. And it's interesting to me because it was very much a turning point in the field where much of the AI field has 50 years playing games. They're nice, they got clear rules, people have invested a lot for getting as good as them as possible. But that was kind of it. So then the only next major thing that happened was Go, which many people thought that computers might never exceed players at Go. And it happened probably 15 or 20 years it would. And that seemed to me because predictions almost way. It's always, you say 20 years and it never happens, or it happens in 40 years. But this is one where people thought we were 20 years away right up until in 2014. We found that Go was beat the top human grandmasters. So, the idea back in the day that chess was a hard game, like that made sense when I was growing up. Nowadays, if I talk to my kid and I'm like, my phone beats me at chess, they're like, well, of course, like it's got a computer in there. Yeah. So why wouldn't it beat you at chess? Like obviously computers are better than people at playing chess. And that's a fact of the universe now. It was a fact of the universe 20 years ago. So the fact that this keeps changing is one of the reasons I think that the field's exciting and is going to be exciting, because the techniques that we use change, but they get subsumed into this same group of people in the same field working on whatever the leading edge is, whatever still surprises us that machines can do, that we expect to be solely the domain of humans. When we talk about machine learning is a specific technology. It's a technique that we use. There's a variety of techniques that fall in that umbrella. There's actually multiple ways to achieve artificial intelligence that don't use machine learning, and in fact, there are many ways to use machine learning that are not considered to be artificial intelligence.
Yep.
Just talking about controls, and this is where machine learning is very heavily used in controls in a lot of contexts that are no longer considered to be artificial intelligence. Like we don't think about HVAC systems as being intelligent. Virtually every HVAC system that has a machine learning algorithm in the thermostat, for instance. So these are two concepts that kind of overlap, but not entirely. One of the things, again, I find very interesting about it is that these machine learning techniques are still broadly applicable. So we're in 3 different business lines, but we're all using techniques that we can sit around and geek out on and talk about the technologies. Definitely. We read the same papers. We read, we read the same documentation. Sure. And in that way, I think the field has developed, and it's looking more like a semiconductor engineer. Back in the day, for a semiconductor engineer, you might only work at a couple of different places. And that started going to where there's more applications of it, more domains. And it's like now you need to have somebody doing PCB design for virtually anything that gets built, any consumer product that gets built anywhere in the world. And the same thing kind of happened. We used to have like companies that were robotics companies. I interviewed once upon a time at iRobot, and they made vacuum cleaners and bomb disposal robots. They don't anymore. They've split that business up. And what we've seen as this, as the field changes, is now it's kind of expected. It's like you can look at something. I think Cascade's a great example. This is a business that you would think of as being in this day and age where it feels like America has moved away from like these manufacturing jobs of yesteryear. Like Boise Cascade's about what you think of. If you think of a big mill Definitely. With a bunch of trees coming in, somebody's sweeping the floors. Nobody has to sweep the floors during the day. It counts, right? But even in those applications, like you hire people like James, the technology, the skill set is being applied everywhere. And to me, that's the sign of the maturity of the that you don't have to anymore be in a specialized application saying, I'm going to go to a robotics company and build robots. You're saying, well, this is the skills I have, and I'm going to go work sitting next to a software engineer, maybe next to a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, and now it's interesting because the application can go and we can go after virtually anything out there.
Right, which wasn't the case in 2008 or it was really on those type of things. Now it's very expansive, so that's good. Yeah. Dan, what are your thoughts? You from all the things I like that Josh was talking about definition of AI. What are your thoughts about that?
For me, it's we started off of rules-based engines. Right? So somebody that knew the system would create a rule, and we'd run the data against a static rule, and that was considered state of the art. Amazing. And then computing power increases, right? We had access to computers, and now and whatever, you can just add some more compute instances and run it. So the computing power goes up. It gives you more opportunity. You see that we're doing different models, and the models are learning and growing. You're just programming stuff in, and then let the model learn some things. So it's gone from the point of I've got a human that has to know all the rules to, I think these are things I can create a reinforcement learning model that says, oh, okay, well, I've optimized this. When you start looking at the outcome, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I didn't see that before. Or some of the other stuff where we're doing things with models now where they're giving us insights onto our own business that we used to be the subject matter experts, and now we're turning some of this over to the modeling and some descriptive analytics and things like that are really kind of pushing our understanding of how things are related. Like James was talking about, well, this group didn't know what that group was doing. When you put an overarching AI system over top of that, you're like, hey, by the way, this person doing this over here is really having an adverse effect to this person over there. And you may not see it as a human. And I think that's where AI is really going, is being able to give us insights over broader areas, because the AI can take large amount of data that a single human can't just grok and figure out, okay, I see the patterns. helps you come up with the patterns. I think that's where the future of AI is going to go.
Well, and what's really cool about what you're saying is it's a common thread here, right? That the expansive nature of what AI allows us to do. And so we're going to talk about, we'll get to you really quick, James. Talk about that on this whole definition thing. I think that, what are your thoughts about the definition and how it's changing right now within AI?
You know, I think that these guys explained it very well, but I mean, I can say that in my work, the definition is definitely interpreted in a different way. Even some of the leadership in the plants, you know, they're a little resistant to AI, right? It's Skynet, it's Terminator, right? And so a lot of my job is really not on the technical side. I wish it was, but I do a lot in explaining the value of the AI. And, you know, I want to add to this, you were spot on in that, you know, like if I'm in a plant and I'm trying to understand a machine, and, you know, the old days we had, you know, 100, you know, inputs, we would trend them and you stack them up on top of each other. And that can get hard after 3 or 4, right? And imagine doing that with 100. You can't do it. It's impossible. But I can do it, right? And so one of my favorites, and I'm going to get a little nerdy here, is PCA, right? I love dimensionality or reduction. 1,000 and cram them into just a couple, and then I can trend that. And so then I can identify these patterns that nobody else could see. We can see them today.
Patterns are, right? Or so important is innovation in artificial intelligence development? Because you were talking about this, Dan? Because I'm sitting going,
it is.
If you're sitting there and you try to hold on to old paradigms, I mean, it's going to be, things are changing. They're going to change even more dramatically in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So how do we look into
Well,
this?
it's what Josh was saying earlier, is that we're reading papers, we're reading some of the same stuff. If you're not learning, if you're not out there reading the latest research, and you're not looking at where it's going, what things are now possible, you're falling way behind.
It's happening fast too.
And it's
super fast.
And you know, looking at the papers coming out of some of the universities and some of the stuff that, you know, maybe we've tried, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, and we can't get a model. We can't pull the right text linkages out of this, or we can't get the model to do something. And then next thing you know, there's a paper. Oh yeah, this you know, grad students come up with a way of doing something novel with one of the neural networks or something, and it can now pick up that connection. If you're not reading the papers and you're not staying ahead, you're...
So if you could talk about, in your industry watch, who are the most innovative people within AI, or what are the most innovative companies? What do you think, Josh?
Tesla.
I'm gonna let you guys think about that, and I'm gonna just say about the like how fast things move.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me. There's things I learned when I was in school, and then I went out into industry. And I think everybody has this experience with going through college. You're learning the newest things, but you don't realize it. So I went out, and then I looked at stuff, and I'm like, oh, I guess they were teaching me old stuff in school. And then like 5 or 10 years in, I seen things pop back up again, and people were like, hey, I heard about the new thing. And I'm like, okay, I had a whole class on that. I just didn't realize that was the new thing out here. Maybe it just took me a while to figure that out. But for me, like, you know, the first part of my career was experienced that way. It was experienced as industry catching up to where we were in academia. But I feel like that has really changed in the last 5 to 10 years. So the example I'll use is natural language processing, NLP, which is probably the fastest advancing field we have right now in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And it's a blind spot for me. It wasn't really much of a thing. Like, we were doing speech recognition and synthetic speech and things like that when I was in school. So now we're getting to all of this actual understanding, not just, you know, can I transcribe what was written, but can I understand the concepts or the sentiment analysis, be able to do recognition, things like that. And, you know, I think a lot of what, you know, what Dan's talking about. So I told myself about 4 years ago, I'm like, I'm going to go learn about NLP because I need to know about it. Literally 4 years, I'm not exaggerating this. And at the time, of the art 4 years ago was recurrent neural networks. It was long-term, short-term memory. And I'm like, well, that's what I got to learn. And then like a year later, I sat in on Kate Kennington for a lecture over at Boise State, and thinking about how like you don't need to know the stuff anymore because it's all turned and it's all go different direction. And it was GPT. And so then I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad I didn't waste that time learning about neural network, learn about GPT-3, whatever that is. And then like a year later, BERT comes out, and it's like GPT-3 is just in the dustbin. Nobody even touches it anymore. And I don't know, I'm probably a year out of date, but there's probably been something new that's come out in the last year that, because I still haven't gotten around to this. So like the entire field just has completely changed. These aren't like minor modifications to how it works. This is like everybody completely is changing their approaches. And it's moving so much faster from academia into industry. This isn't just interesting, again, like in an academic context, but this is companies that do this for a living, people that in things like document analysis. When you have a lawsuit, most of what you're paying for is document analysis. You've got just this huge amount of discovery that you have to go through. There's a lot of money to be made there, and people are pulling these technologies as fast as they're coming out of academia. They're pulling them right into business and applying them. And it also has led to, it's been synergistic with the migration of people, the fact that whereas many fields train PhDs to go and become professors, our field has been training a lot of PhDs doing real research, and then they're able to turn around and apply it. And I've spent a lot of time in academia. It's rare to find a field that cares what your PhD topic was. But in our field, we actually do, because it's straightforward for somebody to go research something brand new and then go turn around and actually directly apply it. Not take 10 steps backwards and do something remedial, but apply it.
But the thing that's going on here is the continuous learning that you're going through, right? Because you're in the PhD program over at Boise State in the computer science program, right?
I am.
Have you graduated almost, or you almost?
No.
You're not, okay.
I've got a paper review right now,
Okay,
and
so-
I'm really waiting for it to get.
So please reach out to your principal investigator and let them know how important Josh is. You know, and I would say that's one of the big things that's going on here, you guys, is that as I hear it, and then if you talk about what you do, James, you were talking about how you continue going. You complete your master's?
I'm still, well, I've got about 6 months left.
6 months left on it?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to be able to
I didn't
understand.
figure we were going to beat up this hard.
I know, my God. I was like, wait a second, I thought we were.
Okay, I finished my master's in December.
showing my
so
grades.
In December?
I'm good. I'm good.
See, there's a little bit more gray hair on that goatee,
done, I'm
right?
done.
Let's hear it for Dan. Yeah.
We're going to need some advice on how to get this thing over the finish line.
Okay, with the gray hair, it's taken me a while. I mean, I had a lot of people say to me, why are you going back to school for a master's degree? Because things are changing, and I wanted to be more advanced, and the data science stuff is just so interesting that I felt that getting a master's degree would really help. And one of the things that, if you're in this industry, there's one skill that you really need: to be able to teach yourself, to be able to go, oh, here's an academic paper, I'm reading it, oh, I don't even know half of these words.
Yeah.
Nobody's experienced that, right?
Oh, I've been there.
Right? So
still in
it's learn a new language and then try to understand the paper and then try to put it into use. If you have that skill, not just for data science, I mean, that'd be amazing for any skill, but you really need that type of skill in data science, because let's say that we're looking at a new NLP. We want to be able to bring in a new type of document, and we're running into some problems. I need to go out and take a look at the latest NLP research to see if there's something out there that may help me solve my problem. And it's not just, you're looking for anywhere, because if you focus on a couple of, the question on influencers, right?
Yes.
If you focus on a couple of influencers, it's not enough. Because, because that guy in the University of Bangalore had this really cool paper, that's the piece you need. Well, I'm focusing on Carnegie Mellon because Josh said Carnegie Mellon, and I was doing that, right? Well, no, it could be some obscure paper, a PhD paper out of some minor college that somebody stumbled onto the piece you needed to solve your problem. So it's more breadth of being able to go find the that you're looking for is more important in my opinion.
Yeah, and we get to do this even in industry, and I think that's the most exciting part is academic quality research in industry that we get to commercialize. The thing that I regret most about my time count is that we came up with a technique that was extremely valuable for us. It worked really well, and we decided to maintain it as a trade secret instead of patenting it. And a year later, that technique was published at NeurIPS, which is the biggest machine learning conference that there is out there, and now it's like it's standard. If you look at Kaggle, like a year or two after that, it was like every Kaggle competition was won with this technique. And I could have gotten a lot of papers out of that. I could have gotten a lot of those things there, but we decided not to. And it's like that's one that picked up out there. But there are things that people are solving in just day to day, like how do we solve this problem, where you're getting to operate at that level. Not all of it gets published out of industry. Oftentimes it's because we don't have the time or because we don't realize doing. Like, I actually thought that this was kind of simple. Like, once I figured it out, it was pretty straightforward and simple. I wasn't sure that it was worth going out and talking about.
But it was very innovative, right? I mean, that's the part that goes on here is
it worked really well.
Yeah. The vast majority of new products and services and R&D that is commercialized comes out of industry. So if you take a look at that, I mean, that's how important this is for us to continue to develop these type of things. James, you had something you want.
Yeah, and I'm going to college, and that's great. I'll tell you, with the internet and the way things are today, you can learn all this online, or the majority of it. I'm not saying all of it, but if tenacity and you are self-taught, you got to put in the time. And again, I'm working on my master's, but as I through the program and I see what's available online, especially today, anybody that won't get into this today, you can do it. You can do it right now. Just start.
Yeah,
and you can know more about transformers than I do by watching a few hours because I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, it's all out there.
And this is actually one of the few industries where you don't have to have a master's degree in data science.
Nope.
The number of people that, it seems physics is a really good, with physics, so I decided to do data science instead. But there's so many data scientists that are out there that they don't have a data science degree. They have an engineering degree, which means that they can, if you've gone through an engineering degree, you have to be able to learn and teach yourself at some level, and have taught themselves data science. And it's valuable.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Okay, so this is interesting because if you're looking right now in the self-taught things that you're just referencing, who are some of the leaders from an industry standpoint that you would follow? And where you're learning, because I liked how you're saying, maybe I might go to Bangalore and have somebody that I don't got to go to Carnegie Mellon, but Carnegie Mellon was really good at this one spot. There's something else that I need to find out that might be a blind spot here or something like that. Who are the ones that are leaders in this industry right now?
Yeah, so I can speak for me. I don't have a specific one. Now, I do like Tesla. I think that they've got a really good plan, but there are so many platforms online. Just like Medium, is an example. I can go on, but just on the YouTube platform alone, there are so many examples of great examples of people that are teaching this.
Yeah, and I think I spend more time probably listening to people who are not actually driving the research because, as anybody who's gone to college knows, doers are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
So one of the other nice things how this is developed is that a lot of these platforms, Medium, YouTube, et cetera, there's a lot of people out there who you can go read the original paper and not make much sense of it.
Yep.
But there's a lot of folks that are really good at explaining, that are looking at the things that are coming out and are converting it into a much more accessible mode. To the point of basically, do you need to go to college to learn this stuff? I think that the benefit that you get from a structured university program is it forces you to get a certain amount of depth. There's been thought put into what things are important that you know, and that are a little bit more timeless, so that you're getting math and the techniques and some of those things but you're not going to get the newest and the greatest stuff that's coming. I really do like both of them.
Yeah.
You have to get the, you don't have to get the degree, but I think if you get the degree, that helps a lot with the foundation. But you got to realize it's not going to be sufficient.
You mean we have to know math for this too?
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to. This is kind of one of the fun things.
Let's say you do.
He's trolling this because if you go online and you read about this is one of the things that people love to argue about is how much math you really know. But for me, I would always prefer to know more than I need, less than I need.
That's interesting. I like that. So how, you have all this stuff like Christensen talks about innovative disruption and how you're always trying to meet customers' demands today, but more importantly, how you can meet them into the future. So if you take a look at AI, how's that helping your companies come up with new solutions to be able to meet customer demand?
In the financial industry, everybody's looking for those insights that get you a little more alpha, a little more return on your money. And so the more you advance, right, the more you can look at broad swaths of the financial markets and be able to pull data out of that to provide insights to a client. That's where AI is really pushing. There's even an entire field, the quants part of finance. There's folks with, PhD in mathematics and data science, and I mean, there's huge teams of PhDs that are just looking at how can I drive the insights? How can I look at all of this data holistically and pull out patterns or trends to help my investment firm make a little bit more money? And
that's probably going to be a differentiator for Clearwater Analytics in the future, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you don't make that, then some other company will disrupt you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you're not looking at where our clients need us to go in the future and what can we do to position ourselves, like in any business, you're going to get disrupted.
That's good. James?
Yeah, so, my mind goes to two things here. Our company is really based on the housing market and commodity prices. And so some of the stuff that we're doing today in the background is now we're able to predict that in a very accurate way. And so that is driving business decision to help customers buy the stuff at the right time, right? And then in our work where it's in the plants, because we're applying these algos that can handle all these inputs, we're able to take the variation in our product and squeeze it. And so because of that, the quality improves, right? And I've seen that with my own eyes. And so now we're delivering a better quality product to our customers. Now, a lot of times they may not realize it, but I see it, right? And so those are two areas I think that
I love what you always said. The thing that you said the very first is that you talked about the quality of the product is so important. Safety are the two big things, right? But you keep those parameters and then you can kind of, you build on.
Let it go. Let it go. That's right.
Yeah, my theory about automation, because that's usually how I like to think about this. Again, artificial intelligence is a characteristic of a machine. Machine learning is these techniques, but the business value that we deliver is automation. And I stole this paradigm from robotics, because robotics is another thing we love to have arguments about what constitutes a robot, what the definition should be. The definition I've always liked is it perceives the world, it thinks, so it has to be more than just a stimulus response, and then it acts. It has some way to go back and influence the world. And when I worked in self-driving cars, the biggest problem we saw for adoption then was how you were afford to put all of the sensors and all of the actuators on the vehicles. Right. Software, we didn't have that problem solved either, but at least that you kind of understood Moore's law will get it solved, the computer will get better. But the sensors and the actuators won't. What happened is that nowadays you buy a car and it actually has actuators on it. Most cars are shift by wire, most there's a gas-by-wire, regenerative braking on electric vehicles, and steering assist on cars now. And I think that's where you see the increase in the applicability for things like in manufacturing. So if you were trying to sell, hey, let me go into a lumber mill 40 years ago, and I'm going to find these efficiencies, you'd never get there because it's like, well, step one, we have to go buy this extremely expensive computer-controlled machinery to do all of this. But you've already made that investment. So there's like the installed base out there that means you can go and you can apply to it. And I see the same thing as like Count wouldn't be in business without e-commerce. So the fact there is this opportunity, because we can go, for us, we affect the world through, whether we let you buy something or not. Yeah. So that's the mechanism. And only because there's all of this e-commerce ecosystem out there does that give us that opportunity. And then you go look at the data. We have to have places to go and collect all of this data. And I think, looking at like Clearwater, that's from where I sit on the outside, that's the whole Clearwater business model. Is people know theoretically what the basis of the value of derivatives are, but do you know for all of your portfolio what is supporting the value of that of those products? And a person could go through and trace one thing all the way through, but to be able to do all of them all of the time quickly, that's the advantage. And really where nobody wants to be in the business. We're not trying to replace people who are making $15 an hour doing, for me, fraud analysis. Yeah. We are, if that was our goal, we valued the way that we're valued as a tech business. So, for us, the questions are all like, what could we do that people couldn't even imagine before?
I agree.
And I would imagine that's the deal in lumber. It's the
same way.
It's like, how much you're getting out of log, that you're getting more out of that log because the techniques that you have are bringing all your tolerances down, and you can enforce that quality. Yeah. And again, for us, we're making decisions in under 250 milliseconds. A person can't do that. So the value now, we used to joke when I was working self-driving cars, we'd joke that you could tell that it was a self-driving vehicle because there were 20 students around it, keep running. Yeah. And this is a real thing. We have Predators now. Firing a Hellfire missile is an unmanned vehicle, but there's 3 operators for a Predator. There's 1 operator for an F-16, what is replacing. It's not to say that there's not value in that, but actually we can see that this automation, it is the human component. And one of the things I'm like a human factors expert, and I got there by being an guy. And what I ever worked with was, how are you going to interact with this? Look at self-driving cars today. So many of the questions are about how, if you're going to do handoff, which is its own, how are you going to do that? How do you make sure that you're communicating what the car is back to the person? So there's this huge, human element to it, and really, I think all the opportunities that people are going after right now to go to your point of Clayton Christensen and looking for where the disruptive opportunities are, is there you can just barely do, right? The definition of disruptive innovation, something that's a low-featured, just barely meets the, because if we can get that automated, then pretty soon we're going to be going up market. And we're going to be doing things where we could only do it marginally before. We're going to be able to do it for everybody right now. And those are, again, it's not going and replacing people's job by one. Yeah. It's about what can you even accomplish today that you couldn't accomplish yesterday because human in the loop was just too slow or just didn't have access to enough data. So
it's interesting you have the human in the loop is important, how you human interaction, and then the other part is how you can optimize human thought that you could accelerate everything, which you guys have done. So I want to do this. Audience, I want to see if we can get a couple questions. So as you guys think about the question, I think it was a burning question. I want to. That's going on with Josh is that we had a deal several years ago, about 4 years ago, where we brought Sterling Anderson, who is from Aurora, one of the top autonomous driving vehicle experts, PhD from MIT, grew up out by Burley, and Idaho. And this is one of the top people in the world, really. And he's been doing some amazing things. And Josh came and ran a deal. But I want to tell you that because this is what having individual thought leadership comes because of the people you know that are experts and expansive in that. Talking about Dan as well. But any questions you'd have from the audience that you'd like to ask from our AI expert panel? Yes.
James, I want to hear your grandmother's.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Is that the devil? Is
That's it. No,
so
it happens.
So the question is again about voice recognition, like when you sit there, if you have it on Google or.
There's always been concern about privacy, and especially with the speech recognition stuff, because I mean phones are getting more powerful, but it behooves whoever's doing the speech recognition to get up to the cloud. I think you're going to see out of the government some regulation about what they can do with the data that we're sending them to translate, because it is getting to be a hot topic. Well, just like you said, it seems that you're not the only one that has noticed that if my wife says something about purple shoes, and I get my next thing I know, I'm getting popping up saying, you know, oh, buy these purple shoes at Amazon. How did that happen? Right? And so there's a lot of concern, and I'm expecting that the tech companies that are doing this, the data to the advertisers, are not going to want to change. But I think people are being monitored, and it's going to have to be some government regulation forcing them to change the.
Any other thoughts?
You know, I don't have a strong opinion on it, but I will say, you know, these things right here has got a AI in them, right? And so this has more capability of today than a lot of the machines doing, right? So you're spot on in recognizing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do have strong opinions about this. I'm kind of a privacy nut. You know, I for the most in the world, and which I'm reminded of today, some another, and I think this. You're talking about the tech companies. I think it's important for us to recognize that, like Google, Facebook, they are tech, but they are advertising companies, right? So that is their business line that they do. And just speaking as I look at what's coming, I don't think they want to be in our houses. I don't want to be running identity for us. See that there's parts of that they divest because they don't be, experts in these regular environments, and to continue to run afoul in in the marketplace out there where they do things that makes as consumer very very interesting things for is dealing now are questions of how we can manage our own data and create those opportunities. I've seen it happen in e-commerce. We at Count, like part of what we do through transaction is we see the device that you're coming from, and that's part of how we know if coming back again if it's somebody else. And for a while, he was browsing in incognito mode, and that makes it very hard. You don't get cookie tracking, so it makes it very hard to recognize devices. And we thought that was existential. We're going to lose this ability. Well, I don't know about any, but again, even as a privacy nut, I don't use incognito mode when I'm buying any more e-commerce because the experience is so terrible. So me was going to say, don't track me anywhere, don't know anything about me, don't do any of that stuff. If I'm actually going and I'm doing e-commerce with a company that I know, I'll get out of incognito mode because I'll be like, oh, whoops, I forgot, because of that experience. And we've seen that as the behavior has changed. So I really do think that the important thing, the exciting thing moving forward is going to be about how you manage and maintain data that is kept, because it's control of it. We don't have these mechanisms right now to be able to do this.
Mute. This, by the way, before COVID hit, I was at a national public policy conference in California, and policy was right, everything we're talking about right here. Then COVID kind of came, and it's kind of, but I think it's still the major issue in the United States right now. We have time for one more question if there's one. It's burning. Yes, let's go right here to John, and then we can. Let's talk. Let's see about if you two maybe have a time for one more question.
Yeah, we sit down with subject matter experts and do some brainstorming on where do we think we can go.
Yeah.
Very important. I mean, it's ideation sessions. Where can we go with this? Where can we take this? Innovation is important. We for it.
Yeah, so for me, that's actually my job, right? If you look at the title here, so around all the plans, I talk to all the leadership, and so I try to share what I'm learning from everywhere else with it, and through that, I'm collecting everybody's ideas and everybody's opinions, and so my main job is to collect it all and then share it with everybody.
Yeah, the question, again, I didn't say it was about get more ideas to be able to find solutions and things, so I think that's great. One last question here.
As much as the thing for me is scaring me.
Yeah.
As an AI in the cybersecurity, like voice recognition, is it any way AI can stand for the AI and using AI instead? Cybersecurity.
Josh, want to repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question is around AI is exciting, but it's also scary. And how can we keep it from doing bad things to us because we're creating all this capability? I think that if you look at to experts in the field, we're generally not very impressed with the stuff that we're building. Very little concern from specialists. I hear people say, oh, Stephen Hawking said, Elon Musk said. Those are two very smart guys, they're artificial intelligence experts. That's the first thing is I think that, none of us are worried about intelligence in humans. That's not what we have out there. It's a lot of the same way I feel our advances in artificial intelligence have been great, and we've never reached anything that starts to look like where all of us start getting easier. But that's the technical side. I think there is still obviously a lot of danger. I live in a cat and mouse game. I fight fraudsters. They use tools and techniques against me that I'm using against them. And and it is cat and mouse. You see the advancement sides, and the job is harder now than it used to be, which is fine because it just means that I'm still in business. I don't want it to ever get too easy. I think we were talking before about deep fakes, and I think that's one of the places where we're starting to see this come out, and like being kind of a privacy nut kind of a guy. I feel like these are new techniques seen, but it's not new problems, right? There've always been problems with fake news, with synthetic content. We're just going to start learning that it doesn't mean anything to say, oh no, I saw the video. Like that's how we say it now. You're like, I heard a story, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen, right? And now, but if you see a video of something, you've thought like, oh no, I guess that really did happen. But I think that's just what in Ukraine. There's video game footage that looks like that's coming out of things happening, and then somebody in the comments on YouTube points, guys, this is a video game. You look back at it and you're like, oh yeah, I guess it is. So we're gonna learn that where I don't think we'll trust this, but there's definitely a lag where it's a little scary.
Josh, I out of time right now, but I will say this, that the scariness of artificial intelligence, I believe, and I'm sure you guys would agree, it's going to amplify, because as you do, so good guys, there are going to have bad guys that are going to amplify it out on all of this too. So we got to make sure we stay on top of this. But I want to make sure I thank Dan and James to come and talk about artificial intelligence, how that is taking place with your companies. Let's hear it for all three of these gentlemen. Thank you so much.